Welcome to Playful Podcast, your guide into the underground scene where we discover topics on kink and electronic music every week. Don't forget to subscribe to not miss out on our next episode. We are excited to be here today with Hollee J, who is telling her personal story on how she got out of a heroin addiction through domination and meditation. In this episode, we speak about her journey starting raving as a 14-year-old and going to BDSM clubs as a 16-year-old. Hollee discovered heroin not through the kink scene, however, found herself in addiction very early on. We also speak about what her everyday life was like on a heroin addiction, how the kink scene was her rescue on getting sober from heroin, some intense stories from her work as a dominatrix, and much more. I want to highlight that this conversation may be triggering and that we are talking about substance abuse from Hollee's own experiences, meaning there is no professional input in this conversation. If you or someone you know is suffering from drug addiction and want to seek professional help, we will add some important links in the episode description. Let's start this conversation. I am Amanda and this is Playful Podcast.
Me using heroin especially was a way to escape feeling like I didn't belong, feeling like I didn't have a use, feeling like, I wasn't good enough. I wasn't worthy. And so I believe that the opposite of addiction is connection. And I was avoiding that through using heroin, through numbing myself. And so by connecting with these people, by feeling like I was providing a service, it helped me feel like I was a part of something bigger than myself.
Hollee, welcome to Playful Podcast.
Thank you so much.
We're so excited to have you here.
I'm so excited to be here.
Okay, but we are going to speak about some serious topics today.
We are.
In combination with what I would say, because we're still Playful Podcast, and I would say a playful resolution to a serious topic.
Perfect.
But I don't know so much about it yet. What 3 words would you say about yourself that describes you?
Master power pager.
Wait, master?
Power pager.
Solid.
But a more serious one, I think, would be strong, resilient queerdo. I think that definitely encompasses what I feel that I'm about.
Would you say that you were similarly this when you were a teenager?
Oh God, no, absolutely not.
No?
It was a very, very long journey to get here, definitely. And lots of self-doubts. Definitely when I was growing up, a lot of slut shaming, a lot of, stuff like that. And so I definitely hid these parts of myself for a really, really long time. And it took a long time to come to terms and embrace and to be proud of these parts of myself, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you are from the States.
Yes.
What was your upbringing like?
So I grew up in a suburb of Los Angeles. And it was quite a conservative part of Los Angeles. Like, I knew a guy in high school that had a Confederate flag on the hood of his car. And I also was going to high school in early 2000s. And so a lot of just kind of like repressed sexuality and stuff like that. And so I started going to raves when I was very young and started kind of like experimenting with counterculture and things like that. When I was 16, I watched a movie called Secretary, which I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
Never.
It's a movie with Maggie Gyllenhaal and James Spader. And looking back on it now, there's definitely a lot of problematic elements to it. But basically, it was about a woman who kind of discovers herself through BDSM. And it really just kind of opened
When was it released? Like
really,
what year?
Really good question. I think in probably the late 90s it was released.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, totally. And so, the internet was kind of like a new thing. And I started researching on these message boards and stuff like that. And I also had a sister that was 10 years older than me. And so I took her ID and I started going to fetish clubs in Hollywood when I was 16.
16?
When I was 16, yeah. And so, thankfully, I could have gone really wrong, but I met a lot of people who were very knowledgeable and wanted to protect me and kind of, opened my whole world up into this culture that I didn't even really knew existed.
It's insane to even picture a 16-year-old.
Oh, it was totally crazy.
It's totally crazy.
Totally crazy.
Wow. So did you have any of your friends there or how?
No.
I mean, you were very brave then, you just, and curious as.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, I went totally solo because like I said, the slut shaming and all of that was really strong back then.
What was it? You were a sexually free person who explored various situations with people and you got slut shamed.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. And for things that were perceived, not even things that I had actually done before, just kind of projection on other people. And so I started going to this one club in Hollywood called The Dungeon, very appropriately named.
I recognize that. Is
Yeah,
it big?
It was. Yeah, totally.
Well, but it just sounds like any club.
It does.
That's maybe why I'm I recognize that.
Absolutely, yeah. And it was attached to this thing called Bondage Ball, which was a major event that happened. I think it was once a year. And so there I ended up meeting a guy named Sonny Black who made dungeon furniture for a living. And so I started subbing under him for about 3 years. And that was one of the most transformative in terms of sexually experiences that I've ever had in my entire life.
Wait. You were 16 years old still. Mm-hmm. You were submissive under a BDSM furniture builder.
Mm-hmm. It actually started when I was 17. We met.
17.
Yeah, exactly. And so, he would make dungeon furniture. For example, he had a hanging cage that he would put me in for hours at a time. And he was just very much about pushing my boundaries, but in a way that I was comfortable with. And
how old was he?
He was 38.
38.
Yeah, 38.
That's pretty crazy.
It is pretty crazy. And
did he know how old you were?
He did know how old I was. And when things really started getting more intense, I was 18 already. And so one of the things that really sticks out in my head was that at the time I had a really big doctor fetish and he knew about this. And so one day he told me that he had a surprise for me and he invited me over. And he put me in a patient smock thing. And he led me into a room where he had a gynecological table that he had painted bright red. And it was set up like a doctor's office. He had anatomy posters everywhere and everything like that. And he put me in the chair, tied my feet to the stirrups and my hands up, turned off the lights and left for I don't know. I mean, it could have been 5 minutes. It could have been an hour. I can't fucking remember. But he came in and he had a doctor's coat, a mask, gloves on, and a speculum. And for the next...
What is a speculum?
A speculum is a thing that gynecologists use to open up your vagina.
God,
to,
the kind of clip thing?
Yeah, the clip thing.
Jesus fucking Christ.
And for 3 hours... he just fucking went to town slowly and with just and I just had orgasm after orgasm after orgasm.
There are so many question marks in my head.
All right,
now.
let's hear them.
What the fuck?
Yeah, that definitely.
Okay. So obviously you felt safe.
I did. Yes, I had known him.
And I know you are also a person who is very much strict to boundaries, and you're very aware. So that's why I'm a little bit taken aback by all of this. Because it sounds like a situation that's very
predatory.
Yeah, you know?
Yeah. Well, I had known him for almost 3 years at this point, and we had really established a sense of trust. And so going into that, I did trust him to stop when I needed him to. We did have a safe word going forward. And I really looked at it from a perspective that like he knew that this was something that really turned me on, and he went above and beyond to fulfill this thing that like really, really turned me on. And it just made me feel very seen and very comfortable, you know, in being able to release myself, because I still am someone who giving up control is a very difficult thing for me. And so to be in the presence of someone who made me feel like I could relinquish that was a really powerful experience in and of itself, definitely.
Wow. Are you in contact still today?
No.
What happened?
So the financial crisis happened of 2008, and he could not do his business anymore. He lost his dungeon making thing.
Oh, it would have been a success today, probably.
100%. He was shipping all over the world. He was making really good money. But also his wife, who was a dominatrix, who I had my first dom experience with.
Because you are a super dyke. It's also part of this.
I am so gay.
Story
it's
that
fucking ridiculous. Yes, totally. And they had a couple kids, and that also like had a huge, profound effect. I met him years later after all of this had happened by chance at an art show that my friend was throwing. And I felt like an 18-year-old all over again. It was just crazy how much I just was like transported back into that time in my life just by seeing him, you know. And I know a lot of people probably have really mixed feelings about the age difference and everything like that. But the amount of respect between us, I don't know. Even to this day, looking back at it, I'm almost the age that he was at when this happened, and I still don't look at it in a negative light.
Thank you for sharing all this.
Yeah,
Hollee.
absolutely.
Okay, but now to take a little turn on your life, you also got into a heroin addiction.
I did, quite early, yes.
How old were you and what happened?
So I was, again, 16. And so I think an important thing to note is that when I was 10, I have this thing called anterior anteversion, which means that my left leg turns in at my femur. And so they put me in cables. And so I don't know if you've ever seen Forrest Gump, but it's like literally a band and the cables.
What the fuck?
Yeah, so I was in those for 23 hours a day for an entire year. And I was ostracized, made fun of, mocked, bullied, everything for that for a very long time. And also at the same time, my mother was diagnosed with a really serious autoimmune disease, and she was in the hospital in and out and couldn't really give me the support that I needed at that time. And so I feel the combination of it being when I was 10, so right before I hit puberty, going through all these changes, and not really feeling like I was a part of a group really had a profound effect on me. And this took a really long time to realize and put together.
10 years old.
Yeah, 10 years old.
Such a sensitive age.
Such a sensitive age, absolutely. And so I think as I got older and as it became harder to relate to people and feel like I was a part of a group, and my extreme social anxiety, it was a way to be able to feel okay with myself. You know, it started because my mother was taking...
Who introduced?
So my mother was taking OxyContin, which is a very serious opioid. And I just took one of her pills one day.
Wait, opioids is also such a huge thing in the US compared to the people who are listening who are from Europe, like me, myself.
Huge.
It's
and very overprescribed. There was actually several lawsuits recently against the family that pushed this because they claimed that it was not addictive. And it was very overprescribed for a lot of people back in the day. And so my mother was taking very heavy doses back then. And I just tried it because it was there.
Remind me again why your mother took it.
So she was diagnosed with a disease called lupus and also a disease called fibromyalgia. And fibromyalgia is just kind of a blanket term of there's something wrong with your nerves, but we don't know exactly what. Yeah. And so I just took one of her pills one day to see what it was like.
And you were 16?
Yeah, 16 at the time when I first took it.
How come you even dared taking the pill? You were not scared of the pills?
No, because I had been going to raves. I had taken ecstasy and stuff like that. And so, no, I wasn't.
You weren't early.
Yeah. I just wanted an escape. I just wanted to not have to face all of the feelings that I had inside of me. I wanted to disassociate. I wanted to be able to, just not feel so uncomfortable within myself. And opioids do exactly that. They just kind of make you forget all of your problems, everything that's going on. You just kind of float and you don't really give a fuck about anything. And that was the first introduction that I had kind of into that world. And it was extremely, extremely addictive. I didn't feel like that overwhelming social anxiety when I was around people.
How long did it last for? The
addiction.
First pill?
They come in she had 80 milligram pills, which is a huge amount. And I took 10 milligrams of that. And it lasted for 6 to 8 hours, basically.
All right. What did you do?
Just laid there.
You laid for 10 hours.
Yeah,
and felt good.
Yeah. To best describe it, it feels like being wrapped in a warm blanket where all of your worries just kind of float away. They're gone, And I did not have the self-awareness and I did not have the tools to be able to deal with the feelings that I was feeling. And so this was a way to get around that. And it was a very, very common thing. And to this day, most people who are addicted to more serious, like heroin, fentanyl, they started by taking prescription opioids because they were very overprescribed.
And then, did you continue taking your mom's pills?
I did. And she found out about it and started locking them up. And then I found out heroin was a much cheaper alternative to that.
How did you find out that?
I started dating a guy who had experience with it and, told me that it was cheaper and, started trying it and it felt the same.
17?
Yeah, 18 at the
18.
time. Yeah. And so switched over to that,
He helped you or?
Yeah. And for example, on the street, one pill of an 80 milligram Oxycontin was $30. But you could get a whole gram of heroin for $20 that would last you much, much longer.
And then you smoked that, or what did you do?
I did at first, yeah.
At first?
Yeah.
And then you injected it too?
Yes.
Okay, so how did that, because it's a pretty, smoking something we associate with smoking cigarettes, which is legal, so it feels like I'm not doing anything wrong.
Exactly.
Injecting is a whole different level.
Thing. Yeah.
So what did the steps look like?
Well, the next boyfriend that I had, he had experience with injecting things. He helped me to inject, which, funnily enough, my veins are so small that it was not a fun thing to do, but it hit faster, it was cheaper, and I could make it last longer.
How long time does it last then?
8 to 12 hours when you inject it.
And you were 18. And you had a boyfriend who was used to injecting things. Okay. What were you still in school at this time then?
No.
You quit school and you were...
No, I graduated. I graduated high school.
You do it earlier than in the US you do it.
Yeah, you graduate high school at 17 in the US.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so what was your everyday life like then?
When I was using.
When you were using, yeah.
Oh, I would wake up and immediately feel sick, contact my dealer. I would have to drive out because the dealers were all in Los Angeles. So I would take my car, drive for about half an hour, be kicking the entire time, which is the most horrible thing, that you feel like you have a flu on steroids, basically. And so I would go and wait, sometimes for hours at a time, to get it, immediately go and, make myself not sick. And then sometimes...
How do you make yourself not sick?
You inject it.
Yeah, but so you saved a few so you could... Or because you were feeling sick on the way to the dealer, so then you saved a little batch so you could continue feeling okay.
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah. Right. And eventually it's about not feeling sick. It's not really about getting high anymore because your tolerance builds up super, super fast. It's just about not feeling sick anymore,
And what is the sickness feeling you got?
It's horrible. I don't know if you've ever had restless leg syndrome, but it's like that. There's no position where you can get comfortable in. You can't sleep. You're vomiting. You have diarrhea. You're just everything is just this, the entire time. It is a horrible, horrible feeling. But unlike the flu, you know that there is a solution. And that's where it becomes really, really fucking hard.
Did you have a job?
I was doming.
You were doming. Okay. We need to blend these stories.
Let's blend these stories. Let's fucking do it.
You were with this furniture selling dom. You were subbing to him. Take us with you. What happened?
Yeah. So I was using the entire time. I was just...
You were using when you were with him?
Yeah, absolutely.
He knew?
No. I was very, very good at hiding it. But it was just, there was so much guilt and shame associated with who I was, not being able to establish healthy boundaries, especially the shame and guilt that went into the fact that I started it from stealing from my mother, who truly needed it. And to lean into myself, to really lean into facing those demons, was an impossible feat for a very, very long time. And so when I very first started doming, for the first couple years, I was using, and I was just...
How come you saw doming as an alternative career, though?
Because I could be my own boss.
But who explained this to you?
That I could be a dom?
Yeah, when you were 18.
Yeah. So the guy that I was subbing under that made Dunn & Furniture, his wife was a dominatrix. And one of her subs, his kink, was being with new girls that didn't really know what was going on. So the very first experience that I ever had with a dominatrix is that he wanted a golden shower. And so I drank liters and liters of water in anticipation to be able to do this. I get to the dungeon where she's at, and he's laying, I'm sorry. He's laying on the floor of the bathroom. It's covered in plastic wrap. And he's wearing a snorkel mask. And so she is standing there, and I'm standing over him, and I am shaking. I am so nervous. And it's been 5 minutes. And so she starts singing the happy birthday song, humming it to help me. And it worked, and I started peeing and couldn't stop.
Did you pee in the snorkel opening?
Just all over him. I was standing over his face, so some of it definitely got into the snorkel, a lot of it all over his body. But I'm serious. I was peeing for what felt like forever. It must have been minutes at least.
It was his birthday for sure.
It was his birthday for sure. Absolutely. And he was loving it. And in fact, he loved it so much that he became one of my regulars after that. And so at the time, I just remember thinking, what an easy way to make money, number one, and that I don't have to answer to any boss or anything like that. And it just became a way to make money. Using it as a way to establish that didn't come until much later. It just became a way for me to survive. But the way that I came to the realization that, you know, this could be something more is that I had a house slave that would come, you know, very regularly, weekly, that I was seeing for almost 2 years.
How did you find this house slave?
So there was this website called Backpage where you could advertise
and
on.
you were on the nets.
Yes.
That's obvious from the whole story.
Totally. Yeah. Yes. And so I was seeing him, you know, pretty weekly, and he was like one of my closest subs. And it was obvious that I was using to anybody that had experience with that before.
How is it obvious, would you say?
So your pupils become like, you know, pins, like the way that you talk, your words are just kind of very like slow and just kind of like you're out of it. You're out of it, and people can tell that you're out of it that have had experience with that before. And so one day when he was over, he had told me that he had had experience with another dom that had had a substance abuse problem, and that he really thought that I could be a great dom, but he knew that I was using, and that he couldn't continue to support someone that he knew was in active addiction.
How old was he?
I mean, I'm not exactly sure, but probably around like 50.
And I'm sorry, in my brain, I paint the picture, and this is how my brain works. So I'm a little bit like crazy with this. I know some people would be like, who cares? But to me, I'm like...
it's important. Definitely. Okay. Yeah. With life experience and all of that, it's definitely important. But I think that why it affected me so much is that, number one, I was seeing him for so long. And number two, he had experience with this. And it's not like he just told me to fuck off. He told me that he knew that I had the potential for this to be something great, but that I was letting this hold me back.
Wow. Are you still talking to this person today? No, but he kind of saved you, you feel? Or how do you feel?
I do. I feel like he opened my eyes to the fact that I was using this as just a way to survive, instead of really putting myself into it. Because at the time, I had no self-confidence. I didn't believe in myself. I was just using it because it wasn't, you know, for me, it was a way to make money with minimal effort. I knew that I couldn't hold down like a normal job. And so I was just kind of phoning it in for the most part, you know? I wasn't really stepping into that. I was still really afraid to assert myself. I was really still afraid to lean into what I wanted and who I was, because those are really scary questions to ask yourself.
For sure.
Yeah.
Definitely. Still,
absolutely.
Even doesn't matter how old people get. I think this is still scary.
Yes.
But like, what changed then? Like, how did the process for you until you quit that look like?
So I really sat down and started asking myself, number one, what makes me feel fulfilled in terms of doming? Like,
how old were you then?
I was around 22 or 23 when this happened. Yeah. And so
a lot happens in the brain over these years.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And I really started asking myself, number one, like, what doming style made me feel like I was actually making a difference? Because when you really think about it, dominatrixes are as much psychologists as they are dominatrixes. You have these mostly men coming towards you that have been shamed and ostracized and have not had like a chance to be able to explore their fetishes in a safe and encouraging way. And so where could I connect with them in a way where I felt like I was making a difference? Because that is important to me. It was important to me. It's still important to me that what I'm doing makes some kind of a difference. And so, you know, things that I really identified with was forced feminization. So a lot of things are forced, which is basically just code for these men are too scared to do it themselves, and they need the encouragement of an outside person to make them feel like it's okay. So forced feminization, putting makeup on them, putting them in dresses, putting wigs on them, forced bisexual, coming, like having another man come in and like saying that it's okay to like, you know, engage in like homosexual acts with these people, you know, just like things that I believed were really affirming, and also things that the submissives would tell me afterwards how much it changed their life to have someone that they felt comfortable, because it affects all aspects of your life without realizing it. You know what I mean? To hide that part of yourself so and be so ashamed of it, because a lot of them were older men, a lot of them were married, and a lot of them felt like they would never be accepted for having these kinds of wants and desires.
And how did that fill a hole that heroin used to fill?
The validation, definitely.
Did it happen like, sorry, I'm mixing two questions.
No worries.
So did it happen gradually?
Yes.
All right. Let's go there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it wasn't an immediate thing, you know, obviously. Me using heroin especially was a way to escape feeling like I didn't belong, feeling like I didn't have a use, feeling like, you know, I wasn't good enough, I wasn't worthy. And so I believe that the opposite of addiction is connection. And I was avoiding that through using heroin, through numbing myself. And so by connecting with these people, by feeling like I was providing a service, it helped me feel like I was a part of something bigger than myself.
Mm. And so you just started using less and less and felt like, oh, okay, I have a session, I'm gonna skip this, I was gonna say shot, but
yeah, I mean, that's
for now, and I'm gonna wait for it until later.
As a way to be present and as a way to be of service to another person, and as a way to lean into myself. Heroin it was really a lot about escapism and to not face myself. And so I feel like by having this other thing to focus on, and by feeling like I could help someone else, it helped me to not want to escape as much.
Mm-hmm. And then when did you find yourself in a position where you had completely stopped?
When I was about 25.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. So 25, you were like, okay, I'm not gonna do this anymore.
Yeah.
And what did that decision look like?
It looked like, first of all, meditation was a huge contribution. And I feel like a lot of my life was about instant gratification, running from myself, and if I felt uncomfortable, immediately wanting to get the fuck away from there. But meditation allowed me to slow down, but to also realize that those feelings of discomfort, they're not going to last forever. They pass. And so instead of trying to hold on to that and just kind of live in that, it's like life is a roller coaster. Feelings come and they go, and that's what makes great moments so great. And bad, you have to have the good with the bad. There's got to be that equilibrium, or else, it would be so boring to have that monotony all the time. And so I think really leaning into the idea that this is temporary. And yeah, it sucks, but you know what? Sometimes life sucks, and I'm only going to make it worse by not being present and dealing with that and running away from it. I feel like it's like, when you have a ball of cables that you just kind of keep throwing cables into because you don't want to really deal with it, you're going to have to unravel that eventually. And the more that you add on to it, the harder that it's going to be. Ignoring it is never going to make the problem go away. It's only going to make it temporarily better until it fucking hits you in the face like a ton of bricks. And that's what I was so scared of. I had dug my hole so incredibly deep that the idea of getting out of that was so overwhelming that I just ran for as long as I possibly could. But it just made things worse. And it took a really long time to realize that the only way to the other side was through it.
So that was a rough time when you...
A very rough time. Absolutely.
Could you work at the same time, or did you have to stay home?
I did work at the same time. Yeah.
Did your clients notice that you were sick?
No.
Throwing up in a bucket, continuing.
Yeah, I mean, my sessions were for like an hour. And so, I was able to hide it. It was a very difficult thing to do. But, I knew that finding a normal job, number one, was going to be nearly impossible. But number two, that there were aspects about this that I really did enjoy, and that I knew that the more that I leaned into it and accepted it, the better chance that I had of being able to fully recover.
Wow. This is interesting what you said, finding a normal, quote unquote, normal job.
Yeah.
Because it's something that so many people don't see as a problem. Because it's just like, you do your education, and then if you're in the middle class family brought up, then it's just like, what education are you going to do next? And then it's just, it's a journey that is like staked out,
Yes.
What did that look like for you to try to find a normal, quote unquote, life? Or did you just see that you are going to be a dom and you feel well in this job? Or
I just, it took a really long time to accept that the path that normal society laid out was not for me. I would never be happy in that. I would be miserable the entire time. And, also like I had been arrested a couple times growing up and stuff like that. And so I knew that trying to fit myself into that box would just lead to misery for me. It really would. And that just because society says that this is what you're supposed to do, you don't have to do that. You don't. You can find your own path. It'll take a lot more work, and there's a lot more stressors that are involved. But for me, it was worth it 100% to go that direction.
Yeah. And are you still working as a dom today?
No.
How come?
So I started traveling extensively at the end of 2016. There was also this law passed in the United States called FOSTA SESTA, which basically says that any website that advertises sex work can be charged with child trafficking and all of this kind of things. And so it took all of this opportunity for sex workers away basically immediately. And so to make it as a sex worker became increasingly difficult. Also, during the pandemic, because a lot of people lost their jobs, like OnlyFans becoming very popular and things like that, the competition is unreal, and it's a much more oversaturated environment than it used to be.
Wow. This is so interesting, Hollee. I'm so happy you share all this.
I'm really, so happy you find it interesting.
It's mind fucking blowing. Do you still miss the feeling of heroin today?
No. And it took me a really long time to get there. It did. But I know that I have so much that I have gained through not using the relationships that I have with my friends, and especially with my family, and how much hard work and dedication it took to get there, and how much growth I've had as a person. It's not even remotely worth it to think about, because I have the coping skills to be able to deal with it in a healthy way that I never had before. And I am so grateful that I'm able to do that I'm able to lean into the discomfort, that I'm able to feel my emotions without running away from them, and that I know that it will pass. And that's something that I didn't realize before because I couldn't wait for a chance for that to happen. You know, I immediately needed to numb myself. I immediately needed for that feeling to go away, you know, and that's just not the way that I feel anymore.
We have now come to the part of the podcast where if you are or want to become a Patreon and support the work that we do, as well as get more juicy material, go to patreon.com/playfulmagazine. However, this particular extra material will be for free, and we will delve more into what practices could help when in a drug addiction and ways on how to break free from it, how to find what to exchange an addiction for in order to get out of it, and more. Go to patreon.com/playfulmagazine. What if we go back to you as a dom?
Yeah.
What are some stories that you could tell us about?
Okay, so 100% my favorite story is when I was working in Chicago. I had seen a guy in New York and he had come to Chicago specifically to see me. And I was waiting at the dungeon. It had been like 20 minutes. I was about to cancel. And he shows up and he said, I was going to not show up, but I knew that you wouldn't believe me. So I had to come. On the way over... On the way over to the dungeon to see me, his 2 front teeth fell out of his head and he came in holding them. And he was like, I wanted to pay you and not waste your time. But he gave me his 2 front teeth and I dipped them in silver and made them into earrings. So that is 100% my favorite story. But why
are you not wearing the earrings today?
Because I lost them because I moved way too much and they're like tight, but I put them on I dipped them in silver and I had like this one basically. I had this dangly earring and I had these teeth at the end of the earrings.
Incredible. Yeah. How did he lose? You can just lose teeth.
I guess. I don't know if it was stress and the fact that it was his 2 front teeth of all teeth that you could possibly use.
And he gave them to you.
And he gave them to me.
And you had a session after this?
No. Oh, God, no. No, he gave me the money and he left.
There's my limit.
Yes. Yeah. I feel like that was definitely reason to cancel the whole session. The other one is that I was working at a house dungeon. So it was a dungeon that is already set up and you just sit in a room.
And this first dungeon was something was your own dungeon?
No. It was a house dungeon.
And the 2 of them are both house dungeons.
So the second one was like a dungeon that you rent out by the hour when I was in Chicago. And so there was like a Google Calendar and you would like block off time. But the first one was a house dungeon. It was right by LAX, the airport. And you would wait in a room. And if someone came in and wanted to see you would get hired basically.
Wow.
And so it was a horrible place to live. The owner was a total asshole. And so I ended up quitting. There was a house slave that had been working there for a while and he kept peeking into rooms as sessions were happening, which was obviously a huge no-no. 2 weeks after I quit, he came back, shot and killed the owner, and then tried to burn the place down. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. He got sentenced to 60 years in prison and it's still open as far as I know to this day.
Without an owner?
They just changed the name.
Someone bought it?
Yeah.
Someone bought it and just changed the name?
And just changed the name.
Shoof.
Yep.
Body's gone. Let's open up. Yep. Start party's gone.
Yep. Exactly. Yep.
I'm so confused.
Isn't that completely insane? They found him hiding in the bushes, like a couple 100 meters away from the place. That's how they found him.
But who was it shooting?
The house slave that got fired for peeking into the rooms.
So I think this is not what I get. What is a house slave?
A house slave is a slave that serves the dungeon, basically, that cleans up after like the sessions and stuff like that. That like they don't pay. They
don't pay?
No. He just has the privilege of being able to be in like the presence of the doms that were there.
All right. Is this also something that people still do? They have house slaves still? Or
I believe so. Yeah, I believe so. I mean, this was in 2012. So obviously things have changed quite drastically since then. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a thing that is very popular among like true submissives.
Whoa.
Yeah.
This is so fucking wild. This is so fucking wild. I never heard stories like this in my entire life.
Oh yeah, I got a million of them, but I feel like those are the best too.
They are fucking insane. Okay, Hollee,
yes.
Thank you so much for coming to Playful Podcast.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
We are so happy to have you here.
Absolutely.
Oh. And now we're gonna go to the extra material.
Okay, awesome.